Broken Arrow launched in June 2025 and sold over 300,000 copies in its first week. For a modern warfare RTS in a genre that's been starved of mainstream attention for years, that's a significant number. The problem is that roughly half the people who bought it didn't like it, and the ones who stuck around are dealing with balance issues, a cheating problem that still isn't resolved, and a multiplayer population that dropped by 96% from its peak within months. None of that means that Broken Arrow is worthless. The foundation is there, the ambition is real. But ambition and execution are very different things, and the Cold War Gone Hot subgenre has several games that got the execution right. Some years ago, some recently. If Broken Arrow left you cold, or if you're just looking for what this kind of game looks like when it works, this is 5 of them. For each one we're going to be clear about what it does well, and specifically where it outperforms a game that had every advantage and still couldn't close the deal. Regiments was built by a solo developer and published by Microprose. This is worth stating up front because almost everything else about this game makes more sense once you know that. Set in Germany in 1989, it drops you into the same Cold War Gone Hot scenario as most of the games on this list, but it approaches the problem from a specific angle. Less micromanagement, more command. Platoons are the smallest unit on the battlefield. Mechanized infantry and their vehicles move and fight as one entity. Attention stays on the battlefield as a whole rather than on frantically clicking individual assets across the map. The pause button will divide opinion depending on where you're coming from, but what it does is make the game accessible without stripping out the tactical problems in front of you. The AI earns its keep, it flanks, it uses artillery with purpose, it concentrates forces for counterattacks. The operations mode, where losses and battlefield changes persist across multiple phases, gives the campaign real consequence and weight that most RTS games sidestep entirely. For a solo dev project, it is punching well above its weight class. The honest criticism is that there's no multiplayer, and probably never will be. The presentation is functional at best, and the replayability has a ceiling. Those are real limitations, but Regiments was built specifically around single player, and that focus shows. Broken Arrow's campaign was widely criticised for being overscripted and restrictive, a series of set-piece missions where the optimal solution was usually predetermined, and your job was to find it rather than devise your own approach. Regiments gives you the operational problem and lets you solve it. That is a design philosophy, and it's a better one. Flashpoint Campaign's Red Storm is the most demanding game on this list, and it earns that position. Developed by On Target Simulations and published by Matrix Games, it puts you in command of NATO or Warsaw Pact forces during a hypothetical World War III in 1980s Central Europe. It's hex-based, it's not pretty, and it makes no apologies for either of those things. If you were coming from Broken Arrow expecting slick unit animations and a modern interface, you're going to need to recalibrate your expectations before you load this up. What Red Storm does, and does better than almost any other game in this space, is simulate how modern warfare functions at command level. The core mechanic is an asynchronous turn structure built around the OODA loop: Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. Both sides issue orders simultaneously, and those orders are then executed based on each force's command and control efficiency. That means orders can arrive late, units can react slowly under pressure, the battlefield can change completely before your instructions reach the people supposed to carry them out. A company headquarters gets wiped out and suddenly your coordination collapses. Units advance beyond the HQ zone of control and start operating on their own initiative, for better or for worse. The friction is not a side effect, it's the entire point. The AI understands this. When it runs into a strong defensive position, it doesn't throw more units at the same problem. It pulls back, regroups, and looks for a flank. Recon units matter because blinding the enemy is a genuine tactical priority, and being blinded yourself has real consequences. Dynamic weather degrades thermal systems and grounds aircraft. Every system in the game is pushing in the same direction, towards an experience where the chaos and uncertainty of modern combined arms warfare is something you are managing rather than something the game is hiding from you. Broken Arrow wants to be a realistic modern warfare game. It's shipped with over 300 units, detailed faction asymmetry, and a genuine attempt at combined arms complexity. But the reality is the thing that determines outcomes is still who can spam the most effective units fastest, and the cheating problem in multiplayer undermines the entire competitive experience. Red Storm has none of Broken Arrow's visual spectacle and a fraction of its player count, but it remains a more honest representation of what modern land warfare looks like than anything Broken Arrow managed to put on screen. Wargame Red Dragon came out in 2014. It has no developer support, no updates, and no roadmap. It also has more concurrent players right now than Broken Arrow, a game that launched last year with a full studio and a publisher behind it. That tells you most of what you need to know. Developed by Eugen Systems and released in April 2014, Red Dragon is the third and definitive entry in the Wargame series. It covers the period from 1975 to 1991, puts 17 nations on the table across NATO and Warsaw Pact coalitions, and gives you over 1,450 meticulously detailed units to work with. There's no base building or resource gathering. There's no tech tree. You build a deck before the match begins, deploy units onto the battlefield using points earned from controlling zones, and keep them supplied or watch them run dry and become useless. The preparation is half the game. The deck building system is what Red Dragon does better than anything else in the subgenre, and it is still one of the most sophisticated army construction mechanics in any RTS. You pick a nation or coalition, choose the specialization that restricts your unit pool in exchange for bonuses and prototype access, then select individual units at varying veterancy levels. Higher experience means fewer available cards. A veteran tank platoon is more lethal, but you only get 3 of them. Recruit infantry is less effective, but you can field 10 squads. Every decision is a trade-off, and the combinations are deep enough that the community is still publishing deck building guides more than a decade after launch. On the battlefield, detection works through individual unit optics rather than a binary fog of war system, which makes recon a tactical necessity rather than an afterthought. Infantry can disappear into forests and towns and become invisible to armour until it's too late. Helicopters need to be escorted or they die to anti-air that they never saw coming. The game rewards players who understand combined arms at a level that most RTS games never demand. Broken Arrow looked at Red Dragon and decided it needed to improve on it. More units, better graphics, a modern setting and a full campaign. What it could not replicate was 12 years of balanced iteration and a community that has stress tested every faction, every unit and every map to its limits. Red Dragon's multiplayer is still functional and still populated because the game underneath is solid enough to sustain it. Broken Arrow's multiplayer peaked at 38,000 players and within months had fallen to a few hundred, gutted by cheating and balance problems it's still not resolved. Broken Arrow launched before it was ready, and it's been paying for it since. WARNO was the game Broken Arrow wanted to be when it grew up. Developed and published by Eugen Systems, the studio that created the Wargame series and defined the subgenre, WARNO was set in an alternative 1989 where Cold War hardliners stage a coup against Gorbachev and World War III erupts along the inner German border. 6 nations, over 1,000 historically researched units, and a division-based army system that replaces Wargame's free deck building with something more structured and more purposeful. You pick a historical formation, the 11th Armoured Cavalry Regiment, or the Soviet 39th Guards Motorized Division, and so on. Each division comes with its own strength, weaknesses and identity. The 11th ACR plays completely differently from the 3rd Armoured. That is by design, and it is the right design. The pace is slower than Wargame, which the community spent years asking for, and Eugen delivered it. The line of sight tool from the Steel Division series carries over, letting you assess firing angles and ambush positions before committing units. The Army General mode adds a full turn-based strategic layer on top of the real-time battles. 5 campaigns running between 30 and 40 hours each, where you manoeuvre battalions across a campaign map, manage fatigue, reinforce broken units, and decide which fights to take in real time and which to auto-resolve. It's an operational wargame sitting on top of a tactical one, and the combination works. The criticism that sticks is the AI, which has a tendency to press the same choke points repeatedly rather than finding alternative approaches, and some persistent balance concerns around armour and helicopters that Eugen continues to patch. These are real issues. They're also the kind of issues that get resolved over time with active development, which WARNO has and continues to receive. Broken Arrow drew direct comparisons to Wargame and WARNO from the moment it was announced and positioned itself as a grander, more ambitious version of what Eugen had built. What it could not replicate was the institutional knowledge behind WARNO, decades of iteration, a community that's played Eugen titles long enough to know exactly what they want, and a developer that's been building this specific type of game since 2010. WARNO might have peaked at under 4,000 concurrent players at full release. Broken Arrow peaked at over 38,000 and then lost 96% of them. One of these games has a future. World in Conflict is old enough to vote. Developed by Massive Entertainment and published by Vivendi Games in 2007, it does Cold War gone hot better than anything since. Set in an alternative 1989, the Soviet Union faces economic collapse and invades Western Europe. It then launches a surprise attack on the American mainland. Ubisoft, who later acquired the game, shut down official multiplayer servers in December 2015 and delisted it from Steam shortly after. It's still available on GOG, but there's no developer support and no official multiplayer. The community rebuilt online play through an unofficial server in 2017 because the game was just too good to let die. It is number 1 on this list because nothing made in the last 18 years has done what it did as well as it did, not one game. You control a small number of units, calling reinforcements using points earned on the battlefield, and operate within a role: infantry, armour, air, or support. The combat system is clean and unambiguous. Tanks kill vehicles, infantry holds ground, air support hunts armour, support keeps everything functional. The tactical aid system is Cold War gone hot's answer to Command & Conquer's superweapons: nuclear strikes, carpet bombing, and airstrikes called mid-battle, each one arriving with the kind of destruction that made you stop and watch rather than keep clicking. The campaign was narrated by Alec Baldwin, written to be taken seriously, and produced with pre-rendered cutscenes that treat the story as carefully as any Tom Clancy adaptation. GameSpot gave it 9.5 and called it Massive Entertainment's masterwork. PC Gamer named it Artist of the Year in 2007, beating out strong competition from great games like Supreme Commander and Command & Conquer 3 Tiberian Wars. The multiplayer was built around immediacy. Join a server, enter a battle already in progress, pick a role, and coordinate because the game demanded it. Infantry, armour, air, support, each dependent on the other, each player accountable to the team. It was Battlefield reborn as a strategy game, and it worked completely. 18 years on, World & Conflict remains the high watermark for what this subgenre can be when the people making it understand that spectacle and substance are not opposing forces. The production is cinematic, combat is focused, the story has emotional pull, and the whole thing moves at a pace that never lets you breathe. It is still the best Cold War gone hot RTS ever made, and it probably will be for a while yet. I'm not saying Broken Arrow is a bad game. It has the foundations of being a great one. But right now it is dealing with a cheating problem that has not been resolved, balance issues around artillery and air units that are driving players away, a single player campaign that critics found restrictive and overscripted, and a multiplayer population that lost 96% of its players within months of launch. Flashpoint campaigns solved the command and control problem in 2013. Regiments solved the single player focus problem in 2022. Wargame Red Dragon solved the long-term multiplayer retention problem over a decade ago and has still not lost it. WARNO solved the accessibility and pacing problem that plagued the Eugene formula for years. And World & Conflict solved the campaign and multiplayer design problem in 2007, and nobody has beaten it since. Broken Arrow has time to fix its problems. Whether it does is another question. In the meantime, these 5 games are right there.